Today I'm going to show you how to sew your own overalls using my Billy New PDF pattern. I'm going to take you through each step from printing the pattern to sewing the final garment, and like me, I think you're going to want to live in these overalls. Hello everybody! Today I'm going to be taking you through how to sew a pair of overalls using my PDF pattern from my website billynew.com. So I'm on my kitchen floor today to show you how to go through this process because I still don't have a workshop or a cutting table or a sewing table where I can sit and do big projects. So I do everything on the floor, but yeah, soon I'm going to be getting a workshop, so that's quite exciting. Anyway, so you're going to go to my website and hopefully buy the PDF overalls pattern. I have 4 sizes at the moment: extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large. That's 5 sizes. With the hope to add more very soon, some more larger sizes. And once you buy the PDF pattern, you'll get sent an email with the PDF attached. And in that email, you'll have the pattern and some instructions. So what you want to do, first of all, is print your pattern. And the first thing you need to do, which is really important because a lot of people get confused over this step, including myself, is you want to print the first page, and it's got a test square on it. And the test square is to check that the scale is right for the pattern. So this test square is 5 by 5 centimeters. So you just print the first page and you measure your square to check that it measures 5 centimeters, which it does. To make sure that the scale is correct when you print it, you need to go to scale 100% on your print settings, and that should work. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to assemble the pattern. So I've printed my first page and I've got my sewing instructions here, which will take you through all the steps of sewing the pattern. But before you get to that, you need to assemble your pattern. So this PDF is A4 pages. So there's quite a lot of pages, which is also why it's important to print your test page first so you don't waste any paper. So the pages are numbered. I think it's 1 to 30, and you'll end up sticking them all together in a large kind of squarish pattern. In fact, I'm going to lay them all out so you can see how it looks. Most of the patterns that are on my website at the moment are going to be laid out like this, but I think with the larger patterns, I've got the 2 pieces, front and back, how do I say that, opposite each other, so one's that way and one's that way, for ease of laying it out in Illustrator, but you should be able to work it out anyway. So I've got these, just make sure I've got enough room. So I've laid out all the pieces that I've printed, and you can see just about that you've got 2 overall pieces there. So that's the back and that's the front, and you've got the pocket as well. So this is how they'll generally be laid out. But to assemble them, you need to line up the borders of each piece of paper, which I'll show you how to do now. So to assemble the patterns, I generally start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, because it makes sense. This is the top of the 2 overall pieces. So you can see there's a border around each piece of paper, and what you need to do is take one, fold it over as exact as you can, and you need to line up the 2 borders then. So you'll take your scotch, it is important to be as accurate as possible during this phase, because even a tiny millimetre out can kind of make the whole pattern go off a little bit. But also the good thing about this pattern is that it's really, really simple. So a little millimetre here or there doesn't tend to make a huge amount of difference or cause massive problems. Okay, so here we've got pages 1 and 2. I've stuck them together. This is a blank page, there's no pattern pieces on it, but I'm going to stick it down anyway, because when you've got the whole piece stuck together, it helps with stability and also keeping your numbers in order so you don't get confused. So, oops. Fold it over on the line and you're just going to stick it down. Make sure it's as exact as possible. So I've finished the first line and I've stuck them all together. Now I'm going to number 7 and I'm going down to the next row of pieces of paper. And you can start to see it, so you line up the borders and you can see also that the pattern starts to line up as well. So it will become clearer. So with number 8, I'm going to fold over this side and I'm also going to fold over the top. So once you've stuck all your pattern pieces together and they're all in the right place, it's quite a good idea to actually also reinforce the pattern on the back with some sellotape as well. And then you'll want to get your scissors and you're going to cut around the outside line of each pattern, because this distance here is the seam allowance. There's 1 centimetre seam allowance around the whole pattern. And then here you've got the pocket where there's 0.5 centimetre seam allowance. So that's a separate pattern piece and you'll still cut around the outside as well. So once you've cut out your patterns, you should end up with 3 pieces, a bit like this. These ones I've already used a couple of times, so they're a little bit rough around the edges, but they are the pattern. Also, what you might want to do, if you want something a bit sturdier, you could get some some stiff card and trace around the outside of these, and then you've got a more kind of substantial pattern piece to work with. So you've got the front, the back, and a pocket. Just a little note on the instructions. You've got 1 centre seam allowance around each pattern piece, which is this. And for each pattern piece you're going to cut 2. You've got the centre front and the straight of grain there, the centre front and the straight of grain. So yeah, hip, pocket, you've got a mark for pocket, waist, the hem's down here. Yeah. So I've got this really nice piece of cotton linen fabric from the Marzi, who I love their fabrics. And I'm going to use this to make myself a pair of overalls, which I'm also going to dye in another video as well. So we've got our fabric. The straight of grain is when you've got the 2 selve edges together. So that's the straight of grain and you fold them together. And this is also the centre front is the straight of grain on your pattern. So you're going to want to cut 2 mirror images of each pattern, and that's why we folded the fabric over. So you're going to find a place on your fabric where you're not going to waste too much. I tend to kind of lay them out like this. So this is where your cutting table comes in really handy, or a flat surface, which I've got neither of right now, but I'm quite good at working with what I've got. So you lay out your pattern roughly. I tend to try and use as little fabric as possible, so I'm not wasting anything, which sometimes means that my pocket will, well, it fits either way there, but I think I'll put it like that. So it depends how you want your fabric to look on the outside of your pocket, if you've got a specific pattern or something you're working with. So now you've got your pattern laid out, you want to make sure that your straight of grain, which is the same as your centre front on these pattern pieces, is parallel to your selve edge. And you do the same with the back piece as well. So now all my patterns are lined up, I'm going to take my pattern weights and you don't have to have specific pattern weights. I've just got old irons. You can use tins of food if you haven't got them. Whatever keeps your patterns in place. And then you're going to want to draw around your pattern. So now you're going to get your tailor's chalk or your pencil or whatever it is that you're using to draw your pattern and mark around the outside. This is where, if you've decided to put your pattern onto something more substantial like a piece of carton, it's easier to draw around the pattern. Just make sure that your pencil is nice and sharp so it's as accurate as possible. One thing that you do want to make a mark with is your pocket. So in fact, you can cut out that little notch where it's marked pocket, and you can just make a little mark so that you know when you're sewing your pattern that that's where your pocket goes. Now you've got your pattern pieces traced, and you can keep the weights on your fabric to stop it from moving around too much, especially if you've got specific patterns on either side. And then you can just cut around the outside carefully. So now I've finished cutting out my pattern pieces. I've got my pockets, 2 pieces. I've got my back, 2 pieces. And I've got my front, 2 pieces. And I'm going to take these to the sewing machine and sew them together. So now I'm going to show you how to assemble the pattern that you've just cut out using your PDF pattern from my web shop with my lovely assistant. Not very helpful. So I'm in my tiny little space here and I've got 4 pieces of overall pattern and 2 pieces of pocket. So when you've cut yours out, you'll have 2 mirror pieces of each front and back. So I'm going to take you through how I assemble the pattern, pieces, and yeah, hopefully you'll be able to follow along. So I'm using this fabric that I got from the Mazzi. I think it's cotton linen, or it might just be cotton, but I've given it a good wash because it was quite stiff when it arrived, and now it's quite soft and it's shrunk a little bit as well. So you always want to wash your fabric first if it's new. To get the shrinkage right, because you don't want it to shrink once you've made your pattern and your outfit and you give it its first wash. So you get your 2 pattern pieces. This is the back. It's got a bigger bum bit. Right sides together, so the right sides of your fabric facing together, and you're going to sew down the centre back and down the centre front with both these panels. I'm not going to pin it, but it's a good idea to pin your fabric if you're just starting out, because it just makes sure that everything stays exactly in place. You've got 1 centre seam allowance. So for me, I'm going to use my overlocker first, and then I'm going to stitch with my machine, and then I'm going to top stitch. You might just want to simply do 1 centimetre seam allowance with your normal sewing machine and then top stitch it afterwards if you don't have an overlocker. doing under there? You're not being very helpful. Not being very helpful, my darling. I've got my 4 pieces sewn together now. This is the back and the front. Shoobies, no. And I'm just going to press open the seam, and then I'm going to top stitch down both these centre front and centre back seams. I always press away from me, that way I can hope that the seams are all pressed in the right direction. It's important to press your seams because it just means the finish is much neater. And then I'll top stitch down. I top stitch all my seams, so this is just showing you how I do it. I won't go over it again, but I do top stitch all my seams. I like it because it just means that it gives the whole garment just that bit more structure, strength, and kind of just looks better. Now you should have 2 kind of pieces of fabric. So your 4 pieces joined together, the front and the back. And what you're going to do now is you're just going to line them up, and you're going to pin to be more neat. But I'm not going to pin because this fabric's really easy to work with, and I've made about 3 million thousand overalls. So you're going to do the same process, 1 centre seam allowance, top stitch with both side seams. You can see there my little mark for where the pocket should go. So now you've got your centre fronts and your sides attached. You've got a shell of a overalls. You've got the front and the back. So the next step that I do is you need to fold and press over half a centimetre around the whole neckline. The way I do it is I use my overlocker to overlock the edges, and then it's really easy to fold over, but you can just use an iron and press over half a centimetre like that the whole way round. Finished? So now that you've done that, you'll need to turn your, you can have already turned your overalls inside out, but make sure they're inside out. Find your front and your back shoulders, and you're going to stitch your shoulders together. Make sure it's the front and the back and not the side to the side, because you don't want to be muddling up like that. So it's the curved necklines with the curved neckline. So then get your shoulder seams, pin, line up, and 1 centimetre in. So now you've got your shoulder seams stitched together. The next step is where you will have ironed over half a centimetre and I've just overlocked, you're going to do each edge, making sure to go to the inside of the garment and just fold it over and stitch around. So you're making a nice kind of finish on the edge. So this is why I like to use the overlocked edge, because it makes it really easy and I'm able to do it neatly. But it's not necessary. Just make sure you've got your 1 centimetre then. Now I've got my 2 pocket pieces. First of all, I'm going to press down 0.5 of a centimetre from the edge on the top of both pocket pieces. These are just simple patch pockets. And then I'm going to measure 4. Measure 4 down to there. You can see the mark on the pattern pieces where you measure to, and then press down. I'll stitch across there to make the top of the pocket. So for both pockets, you're then going to press down your 0.5 centimetre seam allowance all the way around the outside of the pocket. And you're also going to want to just press a mark in to your pocket down the centre, just for lining it up on the pattern piece. So that's one pocket ready to stitch on to the overalls. Now you've got your overalls. You have not sewn up the legs yet, so they're open at the bottom. And you just want to line up your underarm to your underarm. So they kind of look like that. Lay them out flat. And this is where you need to find your pocket marker, which is there. You can just kind of poke something through or mark it like that. Or, so I just like kind of usually dig my nail in a little bit, or you can just measure how far down you want the pockets to go. If you maybe want them a bit higher or lower. So normally around 20, 21, 19 is a good amount. So you find your mark, and now this is where the crease comes in handy for your pocket. You just line up the top of the pocket with the line and the bottom of the pocket with the side seam line. There we go, and then you're just going to pin that in place. So now you've got both your pockets pinned on, you're going to position your fabric. You maybe could do with a few more pins than me, especially if you've got wibbly wobbly fabric. Yeah, so you're putting your pockets on and you're just going to stitch, top stitch around the outside of each pocket. You can leave your pins in or take them out at this point. I'm being lazy and leaving them in. So also with the pockets, once you've finished stitching around the edge, you might want to just put a little tack here or a little triangle or something to kind of add a bit of extra strength to your pockets. So I quite like to just put a little tack. You can do it straight or diagonal, whatever takes your fancy. Just make sure it's really strong, and then you've got a bit of extra strength on the pockets. Next we've got the legs to do after we've done the pockets, so we're just going to fold up the hem and press it in place, but we're not going to stitch it yet. So you're just going to fold over 0.5 centimetre at the bottom of your legs. Oops, it's a bit tricky because I'm left-handed. Measure it. 4 centimetres. There is a mark, but on the pattern, but you just need to put it up. Hello, my baby. You've pressed up your hems. you've got your overalls inside out, and it's the last seam now, which is the legs, the crotch. And you just do exactly the same as you did with the side seams and the centre front. So doing your 1 centimetre seam allowance in and top stitch. And then the last bit is to stitch down your hems, but do the leg seam first. So we are at the final stage of making your overalls, which is doing the hem. And because you've pressed it up already, it's nice and easy to pin down. And then once you've pinned it, you're just gonna, all my pins are wonky, you're just going to sew it. And voila. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this useful. I really love to see what you all get up to, so please share your final overalls with me on Instagram. That's at Billie New Apparel. The PDFs are available on my website, billienew.com. All the links are available in the description, including the link to one of my favourite fabric suppliers, the Mazzi. And as usual, don't forget to comment, like and subscribe.